Hello and welcome to another Doctor Who instant reaction review from the Spoilist.com. I'm Andrew Moir. This time we are looking at Cold War as written by Mark Gatiss. Now Mark has written a number of episodes since Doctor Who returned in 2005, including the rather average Idiot's Lantern and the oddly paced Victory of the Daleks. But his best episode to date was probably The Unquiet Dead, the third episode in the first series of New Doctor Who. That was the first episode in this new run of Doctor Who that demonstrated that the show perhaps had legs and it could entertain fans of the old show anew. It was a wonderful ghost story set in Victorian Cardiff and with a celebrity appearance from Simon Callow as Charles Dickens. This episode, I am delighted to report, is probably the best in season 7 so far. It's very much a back to basics approach. It doesn't try to do anything too fancy. Really, it's an old school base under siege type episode. You could very likely insert any Doctor and any companion into it and it would still work. And that's actually something that is great. We've probably been waiting for that for quite a long time. You see, the problem is, and I'm not sure I even realised it was a problem until this point, that everything has got a little bit complicated. There's the mystery surrounding the companion, in this case Clara, and that's not even mentioned here, and that's no bad thing. But since Amy first appeared, we've had the companion mystery and something that seems to need to be solved, from the crack in her wall to her being pregnant or not pregnant, and then she wasn't really Amy. But it's all got a little bit complex. And of course, we've not really had the Doctor being the Doctor for a while. Yes, he was upset about the death of the Pawns, but before that he was kind of trying to get over the disappearance of Rose and then Donna having her memory wiped. He's been reluctant to have a companion, and that's why we've had these mysteries to bring them in. But really, you just want a simple story, well told, and I am so happy to report that Cold War does this with aplomb. So a base under siege is a classic Doctor Who scenario, and this is why this episode probably feels so much like good old-fashioned Doctor Who. In this case, the base is a Russian submarine in the Cold War era of 1983. Now that explains the episode's title, but it's also a bit of a pun, as the monster in this episode is an ice warrior, an enemy from the classic series. Updated, but not updated too much. It retains a very familiar look, but is suitably scary. This particular ice warrior is Skaldak, who finds himself awoken after 5,000 years on this submarine who thought he was a woolly mammoth. Now, it's a contained episode, and that means it's a limited cast, but they all do excellently. They are soldiers, and there's the usual combination of honourable men and traitors. There's also a zoologist on board, as played by David Warner. He's Dr. Grushenko and he is excellent. He plays a somewhat doctorly role. Now, he was rumoured to be the Doctor at some point. There's a reference to it being a young man's game, all this running around. But he spends a lot of his time with Clara, and it's quite a satisfying relationship. There are lots of really nice touches. He's quite a big fan of Ultravox and other 80s bands. And it sets up the setting nicely, him walking around with a Walkman all the time. But David Warner, he's a great character actor and plays it with great aplomb. Now, with the enemy and the scenario, we are obviously evoking the classic series, and there's a couple of other elements of this on show here too. The HADS activates quite early in the episode and the TARDIS disappears. That's the hostile action displacement system, which was used in the classic series occasionally when the TARDIS came under danger. It disappeared. It seems the Doctor's been tinkering and forgot to turn it off. It's quite good to have this. It's the writers using the Doctor Who legacy for some good in terms of writing. If the TARDIS was there, it could have solved all the problems, much like the sonic screwdriver did last week. So it's good to see a lack of magic really being used to solve any situation. Also, the relationship between the Doctor and Clara seems very old school here. Now, she has died twice before, so it's understandable that he doesn't want to put her into much danger, but it does seem to dismiss her in a sexist, old school kind of way, which hasn't really been seen in the new series with the companions. That does give Clara opportunity to interact with other characters, in particular David Warner's. She reveals some things about herself. She seems to think that she's being tested by the Doctor, perhaps to prove her worth. She has to face down an ice warrior early in the episode. This scene is incredibly reminiscent of when Rose met a Dalek in the episode Dalek from the first series, as written by Rob Shearman. Now, this would seem to be a deliberate evocation of that episode. That remains one of New Doctor Who's best episodes. But there are some parallels with Rose Tyler. We noticed last week when they were in the similar to the end of the world scenario, there was that shot of the Doctor and Clara standing in front of the burning sun, which did seem very much like the end of the world. This perhaps is just part of the deepening mystery of who Clara really is. It would seem, Rose Tyler being perhaps the Doctor's favourite companion, that she has elements of what the Doctor is looking for. It certainly seemed that way in The Snowmen. So this overall is a really excellent episode. It doesn't really require you to know anything about Doctor Who before. It just could slot in anywhere. It could slot in with any Doctor, but Matt Smith is, as always, absolutely fantastic. There's no real arc movement, and that's no bad thing. If you talk about this series, Series 7, being all about the standalone blockbusters, this is the type of episode they should be doing. It should be really very easily accessible, and it should be very entertaining. Like I said before, it's a pretty simple story, but it's so well done and you can't fault it. Mark Gatiss has another episode coming up later in the run, and we can only hope that it will be as good as this one. We'll be back with another review next week. Until then, goodbye.